Right, so welcome back to the On the Ramp podcast. And Dave, this is a special episode. It's not a Chew the Fat. It's not a story.
It's almost like a last-minute special.
A last-minute special.
Yeah, so I got a text yesterday from Alex, 10 o'clock at night, just about to turn my phone off. What are you doing tomorrow? Are you free? No. I want to do a podcast. Okay, I'll be there. And here we are. Yeah. So who are we with?
You couldn't miss it, could you?
No.
We're with Quentin from Gipa.
Yeah.
Not Quinten.
The facts man.
From Gipa.
The
facts man.
The facts man.
Yeah.
Has the facts, has all the facts.
Yeah.
None of the solutions, but has all the facts.
None of the feelings, just facts.
Yeah. So we're gonna I don't know how long this is going to take us, but we've got some really interesting data to go through. Yesterday, I was at the Schaeffler conference, and I had the pleasure of seeing Quentin in action, and some fantastic insights and real food for thought. So we're going to discuss some of those insights that we saw yesterday, but get into a bit more detail as well. Some data from Garage Industry Trends, which we've spoke about in a previous episode, and just see where it leads us, essentially. So,
and the good thing is like me being here is a bit impartial because you two are data geeks and I'm just...
Well, we needed someone here to stop us from gazing into each other's eyes. Losing the plot.
Let's talk about graphs. Yeah. Shut up. Get on with it.
So you need to pull us out of that
hole.
hole.
I will. Don't worry. I've got you all. Don't worry. I've got you.
Keep us real.
So I feel pretty honoured, really, because you're in extremely high demand.
Yeah.
You're at pretty much every single conference, telling everybody what's going on. You're certainly the authority in the industry.
Definitely the expert.
Around data. Definitely an expert this time, so we can say that.
Yeah.
We're not.
No, we're getting there. We're doing all right.
Yeah. So, Quentin, do you want to just quickly explain for the listeners who Gipa are and what you actually do, what your job is?
Yeah, thank you very much first for having me. Great pleasure to be here. That's brilliant. So I'm Quentin from Gipa. I'm in charge of Gipa in the UK and have been for the last 6-7 years now. 6, 7. I don't know. Anyway, it's been a few years. Yeah. It's been a few years. As you can hear, I'm French, but I've been actually involved in the UK market since 2014, so I know much better the UK market than the...
You lived here for quite some time as well?
8 years. 8 years. And still very much only involved in the UK market. So, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about the French market, but at least I can tell a few things about the British one.
Good.
At Gipa, we focus on after sales, automotive after sales solely. So that's all we do, and we talk about clutch injectors all day long. That's what we do.
So the odds are that if somebody hasn't heard of you, they've probably at some point seen your data. So my understanding of the way that Gipa works is you supply data insights to lots of the bigger suppliers, not necessarily to independent garages as such, but some of the big suppliers, some of the big corporates will acquire your data, and then some of that data is going to make its way through to independent garages. So if we see some reports, or take the IAAF, for example, they do that really good MOT update each month. That's actually your data, isn't it? That's coming through to the independent garages.
Yes, so the way we position ourselves is like an intelligence company. So we have data, and really we help whoever we work with to understand those information. It's not just like, okay, hey, it is good luck, but really working hand in hand to make the most out of it. Okay.
So you're doing the research, building the reports, and then you're assisting these companies to actually understand what that means and what that could look like in the future.
Exactly. No, we are not a consultant in the way that we are going to tell them what to do, but we are going to say, okay, look, that's the facts. And now we that's how we see it going, and that's what it is. Now you need to make your decision.
You need to figure it out.
You need to go. Okay. We're not going to tell them, okay, the roadmap for your next 5 years is this. You need to do this. You need to do that. We don't do that because we work with all kind of players in the industry. We work with vehicle manufacturer, part manufacturer, tire, lubricant, part distributors. So we provide that kind of British aftermarket 101 information, if we can say that, and then we can go deeper into specific detail with customers who are asking us about that topic or that topic.
Okay.
Which is great. That's really good for the independent because it's not pushing a certain person's narrative or a certain supplier's narrative. That's just the fact.
That's just the fact. Yeah. And I think that what we would like to do, because I've listened, I've had the pleasure of seeing you present several times, and I'd like to basically pick your brains today. And we're going to speak about specifically around independent garages and actually some of the data that, again, we're we're not the experts, as we said. We're not going to have the answers, but we're going to have opinions on some of the data, and we can ask you what some of that data looks like going forwards. But it's really to give people a foresight of what might be coming around the corner, and perhaps consider something that hasn't yet been considered.
And just maybe position yourself maybe ready for something you wouldn't have considered before.
That's it, yeah. And that's the key.
And I think for people who are listening, really, the idea is that let's talk about some facts in the market, and then the idea is what are you doing about it?
Yes.
If you're doing nothing about it, and that's what you want, then that's fine. But just at least the idea
intentional.
Really is to not haven't seen it coming, and then being like in 3 years' time, all right.
I
should have
I wish
thought
somebody
about
would
it.
have told me this.
Exactly. so yeah, I think that's really, for me, that's the intention as well. Being here is that okay? Let's hopefully have some thoughts coming to you and then to the listeners, and okay, what can we do about it?
Okay, well let's dive straight in then. So one of the points that I picked up on your presentation yesterday, which I found the most fascinating, was around the car park evolution. Now, you hear the car park's getting older. Obviously, COVID's had some impact on that, well, a significant impact on that. And that has presented a lot of opportunities for the independent sector, the aftermarket sector, because aging vehicles means more repairs, right? It's pretty straightforward, pretty logical. But there's also some coming risks, isn't there, in that? And as that car park moves through those days, do you want to just explain what it looks like today, what it might look like in a few years' time, and how that's changed from the previous few years?
Yeah, so if you look back in 2019, and bear in mind that in 2019, you look at new car sales. That's looking at a market. That's where you need to start looking at is the car sales, because that's going to be your car park in the next few years. That's just an addition of car sales minus the write-off, more or less. If you look at before 2019, great registration, almost 7 million back in 2016, huge numbers. So we arrived at the end of 2019, telling, okay, look, the 5 to 9 years old car park is going to be the battlefield, and it has already started a few years ago because of this injection since like 2012, or huge registration. And then COVID happened, so that just accelerated the whole thing, because we were selling only like 1.6 million cars in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So the 0 to 4 years old car park was 37% of the car park, of the overall car park in 2019.
In 2019? Yeah, which is crazy, isn't it, when you think about how good the dealerships had it then at that point.
And now we are looking at about 27%.
Yeah.
Okay, so in just a few years' time, the decrease is huge.
Yeah. Okay?
That has, of course, inflated the 5 to 9 years old car park, which actually reached like its pinnacle now.
So that and we've being in the independent sector, you can almost feel that like it feels really, really strong, feels really good, but it's really important to note that that's probably the peak, isn't it? We are where we are now is the most cars as a percentage to ever exist is probably right now in that 5 to 9 year segment. Indeed. Isn't it?
So if you look 2019 again, 28% of the whole car park was between 5 and 9 years old. It is today 35%.
Yeah.
That's the highest we had in a long time. And that is the maximum we'll get, because now, last year, we sold 1.9 million vehicles new. It is going to be probably around 2 million, 2.1 million this year. The market health is relatively good. Okay, we're not back to 2.3 and 2.5 millions. And are we going to ever go back to that level? I don't know. But what is sure is that growth in new car sales, again, is opening a new cycle. And that's very important for whoever is listening to understand that, because the question you need to ask yourself then is, okay, what am I going to do about it? For the next 3 years, the 0 to 4 years old car park is going to increase again. 5 to 9 is going to shrink.
And on the point of it shrinking, if we look at garage industry trends data, it's really clear that 6, 7, 8 year old segment is the most abundant, has the highest overall revenue, has the highest average invoice value. And there's a lot to be said around the type of owner of that 5 to 9 year segment of car is a car that they rely on. Massively. They still want to keep it highly maintained, and there just so happens to be the most of them that there will ever be at this point in time.
And potentially businesses might be looking at this like this is their forever game, just sitting in there, and that could be very sort of risky. For
could be
them.
very dangerous. Yeah, you could get caught
yeah.
out. Yeah, if you're not careful.
For sure, and that's the segment that we see that has the highest annual mileage. So that's where the car is being used the most, and that's also where mechanical issues happen because of the age of the car and because of the you've driven by that time around that time you're close to 100,000 miles potentially. So as you said earlier, yeah, exactly.
But they're still young enough for the owners to really. They're still valuable, and they're still young enough for the owners to really care about those cars.
Indeed.
And a repair like a turbo still means that it's worth doing because the resale value after justifies doing it.
Yeah.
And you don't want a cheap part. No. Not yet. Not at that. So you're looking at premium brands. You're looking at genuine brand. Whatever is the best for your customer. That's most of the average will want that type of repair. Sorry.
Yeah, and so if we look at looking a bit deeper into the aging car park, then so now something you mentioned earlier is that the diesels are now older than petrols. Yes, as an average as well.
So if we look again at the new registrations back in 2010, that's really where we started selling diesels in big proportion in the UK. And from 2010 onward, it was more or less 50-50 between petrol and diesel in terms of new car sales. So that means that this diesel car park is still relatively young because we only started selling them in 2010. And only because since 2014, Dieselgate and all of this, the sales started to go down. It's been only 2 years that the diesel car park is now older than the petrol car park, and now it's just going to increase.
And a lot of that, the reason that's happened is because diesel over the last certainly the last 2 years, but the last 3 years, or probably since Dieselgate really, that diesel sales have been in significant decline, haven't they? To the point now where in a passenger vehicle, there almost aren't new diesels available to buy.
Yeah.
So the registration is really...
It's about 6-7% of all registration in the UK are diesel now. It used to be 50% 10 years ago.
But it went from tax advantage to tax disadvantage, didn't it?
It really did.
That created just that shift like immediately, for any
and it's
company.
the whole the impact that Dieselgate had on people's perception of diesel. Like you would buy a diesel because it was the right thing to do.
Economical way of driving.
Typical government pushing.
Yeah.
Their narrative, and look where that's...
And then you've gone from £200 a year car tax to $650, and you're just like, I'm driving the same car.
Yeah.
So 5-6 years ago, the diesel car park was about, like, let's say maximum 7 years old on average. Now it's over 10 years old. Okay, so for an independent garage, what that means is that there are great opportunities around diesel. That's the kind of age where injectors starts to go wrong, specific diesel technology start to have some issue, needs to be cleaned and so on. So in terms of independent garage, this is a great opportunity for the next 5, 6, 7 years to actually get your diesel right, if I can say that. And that's just going to kind of fade away.
And it's going to fade away pretty quickly. When that fade happens, it's going to happen pretty quickly. So I've got no doubt for the next, I don't know, like you said, the next 3, 4, 5 years, it's an opportunity. But you have to look round the corner.
It's a dwindling, isn't it? It's getting less and less.
Looking at trends data again, just in combination with your data, we actually measure the average invoice value by fuel type. And in 2024 alone, so for all transactions in 2024, diesel was £339 average invoice value. Second highest was hybrid at 247. But look at the difference.
It's insane.
It's like not far off £100 average invoice value difference. So again, when you consider that, it's not just the quantity of diesels that's going to drop off the edge.
Yeah,
it's going to take an awful lot of revenue with it when it comes. And this is what this is about: is don't be blindsided by it because it feels great today, and it's going to feel great for a few more years. But be under no illusion, those diesels are going to they're going to go,
and they're not being replaced by diesel.
They're not being replaced by.
So I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this when I was at work. Is like we go through this place where it's like I'll try and keep the car in all day for the whole day, but in reality there won't be that much to repair on all the newer cars, so you're going to have to increase the volume of cars through the business to satisfy the amount of
course
GP that's required.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas, and I think a lot of people have gone through this sort of like less is more process over the last few years, where it's unfortunately you're going to need more because it's considerably less.
Well, it gets to a point where less is less.
Yeah, less is just less.
Less is just outright less. On the topic of diesel reduction, so Andy Crook is speaking at the UK Garage and Bodyshop event about diesel reduction. So he's literally doing a presentation around the reduction in diesel and what that.
And he's going to be way more prepared than me and you. Not so much as Quentin, but like as in like he's going to have a lot more.
I think Andy can be considered an expert.
Yeah, he's there.
So go and listen to him. It's definitely going to be worth understanding what the impact and the decline in diesel is going to be to the aftermarket, because one thing is for sure, it's coming.
Yeah,
it's just a case.
It's just a matter of time, isn't it?
It really is just a matter of time. Just finishing off on the aging car park then. So another point that you raised, which I found really interesting, is that the time for a new car to become a used car has extended.
Yes, you can see that people are holding on their car longer. And if you look at the average age when a new car become a used car for the first time, it used to be just before 3 years old.
So just quickly explain that one. Is like a brand new car when it's owned from the first owner is when they stop owning that vehicle. Yeah. Then it becomes a used car after that.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. So when that happened, it used to be just before 3 years old back in 2019. You've got your service plan that is coming to an end. Potentially the manufacturer, like mandatory warranty, is coming to an end. You've got your finance plan coming to an end, and the question is, okay, what do you do? Balloon payment? Do you change the car? Do you carry on with a new deal? What do you do? And people would generally change model.
Change the car.
Yeah. Now we can see it's not so much longer, but it's over the 3 years mark. It's about 3.4, 3.6 years before it becomes used. Okay, so people are holding on their car longer. That's for sure. Maybe they are waiting because right now and the inflation that we saw over the last 2 years, interest rate. Maybe they can't afford it right now, and maybe they are on a tracker on their mortgage. That's not the right time. So that part is interesting. What we can see as well, and that's on the aging of the car park, is the increase or in proportion of the 15 and older cars within the car park. So it used to be 10% before COVID in 2019. 10%, 1 in 10 cars in the UK was 15 years or older. And that's right now it is 16%. And that's only going to increase because people keep their car longer.
Yeah. I know we had a quick discussion on this before jumping on, and it was like the balance of like what people have this as more of a, I love this car so much I'm going to keep it at any cost.
It becomes cherished, doesn't it?
So cherished is obviously a portion, but then there's also a case of this is all I can afford and this needs to be as cheap as possible.
Yeah. But in terms of usage, what we can see is that those drivers with a 15 years old car back in 2019 versus now, we can see they drive with that car 500 miles more than they used, or than the same profile used to back in 2019. So you could tell 500 miles is not much by vehicle, but you take into account that back in 2019 there was 3 million vehicles within that bracket. 3 million times 500
is a lot of miles on
that's
the road.
A lot of miles. You divide that by 30,000 miles, or 25, which is going to be your average frequency to change brake pads. You've got X amount of brake pads more. So that's actually important. 500 miles.
And I think that this whole car park aging discussion, this first topic we're speaking about, I think it's from a garage owner's perspective, it's understanding what the risk is, and the risk is clearly, to me, the risk is diesel reduction. What the opportunity is.
Yeah.
And the opportunity is that if a car is being sold later and becoming used later, so up to 4 years old, and if the average, what's the average age? 3.6, did you say? No,
about that, 3.4, 3.6 years.
Which means it's an average, so they're going to be 4, 5, 6-year-old cars.
For sure.
So if someone buys a car from new, the odds are that they're in the dealership, they're in the franchise network, getting that car serviced, got a service plan, first 3 years, warranty, etc. And then at some point, they've got a decision to make. Do I go back within the dealer network, or do I look towards the independent garages? And these would typically be customers who are used to the dealer way of doing things, which some dealers are going to be great, some dealers are going to be bad, just like independent garages, but they're going to want things like service plans. They're going to want things like a nice reception. They're going to want things like online booking. They're going to expect that level of customer service.
Just convenience,
Just convenience. So if a customer is considering an independent garage from that situation, you just need to be prepared that you can convince them that it's absolutely fine. We can look after your car. We can service your car. You know,
we have a digital diary.
We have a We've got rid of our paper diary.
We did, just on that point that is very interesting. We did recently a research with 3,000 drivers. Some are customer of dealers, some as customer of independent garages. And we did an analysis that is, I was about to say the name, but we don't really care. What is important is that we take different items, 14 different items, and we looked at the importance of each item within the overall satisfaction of like the NPS score of the driver gave to the garage, depending on the garage they went into. Just to give you one example, because that gives you a very not easy to read matrix that is very interesting, where you get like your basic element, you need to have that, your primary satisfaction element, your bonus element, and so on. And sorry?
It'll be a bit of Alex that will, that graph.
I'm getting excited.
I'll show you afterwards. But basically, you're mentioning those drivers that potentially move from dealer to independent garage. A very striking one, very simple one. Basic element, which is if you don't have it, that's going to increase the dissatisfaction. And if you have it, but you don't do it properly, that's going to increase the satisfaction. That's never going to increase your satisfaction because you're expecting it. But that's going, if you don't do it properly,
it'll decrease.
Yeah, it's going to increase the dissatisfaction or decrease the satisfaction. Clean place of repair, that's where it is for dealers. It is right here. If you arrive in a messy place, the drivers are like, no way, I'm not coming to a dealer for that.
It's a sort of signal. We was talking about signaling the other day, and that signals where you're at. It's massive. It's massive. Like
a clean place of repair for independent garage clients is a bonus element. If it's done, that's going to increase my satisfaction. If it's not here, it's not going to decrease my satisfaction.
Right. That just shows the expectation versus reality.
Exactly.
Doesn't it? Because their expectation of an independent garage is not cleanliness.
Yeah.
But the point you're making about catching a customer dropping out the dealership, they're expecting it. It's just an expectation.
If as an independent garage, someone wants to go down that route, there are certain elements to take into account that's a complete different type of customer. So you need to do your research, if we can say that, to have an idea where you're getting into. Maybe you already have a sparkling clean workshop and all that kind of things, great waiting area with comfortable sofas and everything, but just you need to think about it.
And I guess the risk to independent garages is that because we're in the best time probably will ever be in terms of percentage of vehicles at the right age, the dealers are in the worst time that they're probably going to be in terms of percentage of cars that would naturally go back to the dealership between that 0 and 4 segment. Mm-hmm. So there is a risk that those dealers are going to drop into the segment that they've previously left, which is the 5 to 9 segment.
Yeah, and we're already seeing that with them having menu pricing to entice them back into
different labour rates as well.
Exactly.
They'll have lower labour rates for older cars. They're having really competitive service plans for older cars.
Yeah.
So it's a reality now, and it's probably going to become more so of a reality over the next few years. That independent garage, again, you've just got to just be conscious of it, that your customer in that 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old car for the first time is going to be targeted by a franchise dealer.
On both sides.
On both sides. Yeah, just to go back into it. So it's just to be conscious of it, be aware of it.
Very true.
Yeah. Okay, so that's car park then. So the next topic I want to speak about reasonably briefly is the MOT cycle. Mm-hmm. So again, you presented some fascinating data around this. For those of us living in the MOT site, with MOT stations, you know what's happening. You know that COVID completely flipped it on its head. It was previously, what I took from your presentation yesterday was that you said that it went to, was it 30% in the first half of the year? And
so before that exemption, it was 53% of all cars that need an MOT had that MOT done within the first half of the year, 53%. So we had a split of the year, which was 53-47. We then had that 6 months exemption, which means that April was close to nothing in terms of MOT. May was a bit better, but quite cut compared to the usual May. Yeah. And so we went on that year for almost like 35% in the first half and 65% in the second. And now the market is just like readjusting itself.
Rebalancing itself,
because you get those cars that becomes 3 years old for the first time. Generally, a lot of them are registered in March.
Yep.
So in March or April, they need. So it's getting better. But what a headache it is for any MOT tester, whether they are an independent garage, a dealer, or whoever they are. It's a proper headache in terms of resources.
It's all or nothing, isn't it?
It was a nightmare, wasn't it? And it's funny this year because I don't know about you, Nath, but for us, first Q1 was awesome all round.
Yeah.
April started strong, kind of like off the tail end of March, but the last 2 weeks in April for us were really, really quiet on MOTs.
Yeah, we've found something similar. It seems like the trends sort of like more recently. We felt like more of a pinch than what we sort of expected.
It kind of like it felt like it dropped off later.
Yeah. I felt like I was being led. I thought, we've made it through.
All good,
and then I was like, oh no.
Yeah, no, we haven't.
Yeah,
okay, here
cool.
we are.
Yeah.
And then it started to, we're well on the road to recovery. And if you look at garage industry trends, that pretty much matches the story. Yeah. But it's quite interesting because we were, this year, the MOTs were better than last year for the first 2 weeks of April. But then like the last week in April, it kind of went the same, if not slightly lower than last year's April, which was, I didn't expect that, but that's, according to trends, it pretty much lined up. So for the first time, each year it's been recovering nicely. Yeah. And then this year it like touched and went up. And is that to do with the number of cars that were registered? Because we're coming to the third or fourth year since COVID.
Yeah.
And in April there was 0 cars registered, wasn't there? So
indeed.
So the recovery, whilst it's been recovering the last few years, this year it actually, those new cars weren't coming through.
Yeah.
You had some new cars registered in March, but obviously none were registered in April, were they?
Yeah, it was like 4,000 vehicles registered.
Yeah, exactly. So those 4,000 vehicles
and the top
are the ones that
Tesla.
came through to MOT. So it probably makes sense. But next year I'm expecting a reasonably nice recovery.
It is getting better, and I think that's important for any kind of after sales player to understand that MOT is crucial in the after sales in the UK, because the repairer, the tester is also the repairer. So in the mind of the British driver, if we want to be a bit caricatural, it's okay. I need to go once into the garage. What it is for? I think it's an MOT test. It's a service. It's a bit of both. It's an oil change, whatever it is, interim, major service, whatever it's called. I know I need to go once a year. And that MOT kind of date that they have when they go on the DVSA and check, okay, it's next week.
Yeah.
That's
the date they're dragged in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
And in all MOT entries, MOT related entries, in the research we do, in more than 1 in 2 entries, there is more than just MOT.
Yeah.
It's going to be a service, it's going to be oil change, it's going to be oil filter, brake pads, tires, because often tires are actually worn out, and that's during the MOT that you as the driver you see that. So MOT
it's a cultural thing in the UK, isn't it, that generation after generation you get dragged into the garage when your MOT is due. It's very rare that you'll think, oh, you know what, I'm going to proactively go and get my car checked. And that's why the UK roads are so safe, though, because we have that MOT every year. And whether they like it or not, they have to go to the garage. But I guess from the garage owner's perspective, it's also to consider that might be the only time the customer's going to proactively go to the garage, which when we talk about servicing cars and health checking cars, that is a real opportunity, and that's something that if the customer's expectation is to only go to the garage once per year, ideally in their mind, then help them achieve that.
Yeah.
Make sure their car don't just pass the MOT.
Don't make them resent coming back in month 4
That's
because
right.
they haven't.
And there are some very easy checks to do. Like if you want to do the whole 120 point or whatever you have with your VHC, you can do that. But I mean, just checking the health of the battery.
Yeah,
that's such a painful issue to have a battery breakdown. You just check it every time you get a car in the workshop.
It's the worst time for the customer as well.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse, and it's that. I think James Dillon used an example around, as a mechanic or a garage owner, a flat battery is, you got some jump leads, probably got a boost pack at home.
You've got everything you need to get going.
It's not a problem. But if that mum on the school run on a Monday morning goes out to the car and the battery's dead, that's like,
what do I do?
That's a major problem. That's a major problem for everyone involved.
And that's such an easy sell, if we can say that, for the garage.
Of course it is.
Look, your battery is weak.
Yeah.
For whatever price, £100, £80, I don't know. I would really recommend you change the battery if you don't want an issue.
Yeah.
You will still get some people who would say no, but how many are there?
And there is also an expectation. I mean, I'm sure every garage owner can relate that you've MOT'd the car, so the entire car must be of absolute perfect standard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an expectation that if they've bought the car to you, they're assumed that a lot of them are going to assume that you've checked that car, you've checked the battery, you've checked when the time belt was last done, you've checked whether it needs a service. And if you give them that MOT certificate, it's to them that's their certificate of safety for the next year and reliability, which we know is not the case. So if a customer's expectation is that, then lean into it. It's
Give
an
it to
it's
them.
an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've got to become better communicators of this stuff. Across
100%. Yeah, I agree completely. And yeah, so young car service. Yeah. So the next topic we were going to speak about the again we've kind of covered it from a cultural perspective that 311 in the UK works and 422 in European countries work because
That's always been like this.
it's always been like that,
Yeah.
and it's that as I said, the generational thing. If your car's not going to be checked for 2 years, then you've got to go get it checked.
Going to get it checked, yeah, of course.
And that just becomes the norm.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they dropped that on the UK public?
Oh, look what we've seen with the COVID and the extension. So people using it.
Yeah. I've got my 6-month extension.
Buzzing.
Yeah.
I won.
We actually got a cancellation, and the reason was I'm taking advantage of my extension. Sound. Cars fixed itself.
Yeah.
No problem.
Great, good luck then.
Yeah. So if the government said I need an MOT every 2 years,
Yeah.
that means now my car
There
is
we go.
safe
Yeah,
for
that's
2
that's
years.
what
You
you're gonna
know.
get.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's true. If you look at the way I'll describe the French way, but the German, Italian, Spanish way are very similar. It's 422. So you need an MOT done every 2 years. You have to go to a special testing station, which isn't a repair station, to get your MOT done, hopefully. If you get a failure, so you pay 60, 70 euro to do that. If you don't, if you fail, you're gonna have to go through the whole list. Okay, you pass that, that is a problem. So that you need to fix it. How do you fix it? You do this way, you go to the garage, you ask the garage to do this, to do that. Or if, for example, you know those kind of old headlights where you have to kind of de-blur them. If I don't know how to
clean
say
them.
it.
Polish
Yeah,
headlights,
polish
yeah.
So they tell you polish them. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Got you.
So if you you could go, they will tell you, okay, you can go to the body shop. They will do that proper job for that. If you want something cheaper, you just go to that place and you buy that kind of product. You will do it. So because of this process, so then you need to get it sorted, and then you need to go back within, I think, the next 60 days to get another MOT test, so 60, 70 euro again, on top of the repair you just made, to hopefully pass the test that time. And then you're on for another 2 years. So because of the whole list you went through and potentially...
Sounds like a nightmare.
Sounds
Yeah,
very
it's-
thorough.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a headache. So because of that, people are committed to come and get their MOT done
Passed.
on the first time.
Yeah.
While here, if I can say, you just think, okay, I have my MOT to be done. Whatever happened and whatever the state of the car is, more or less today or a bit longer, if the
It'll be
part is
fixed
a
back
problem,
on the road.
it's going to be
Mate,
fixed.
give me 2 hours. I'll have that back on the road. No retest for.
Exactly, and I don't have to worry about it for the next year. While in the other case, you have to worry about it for the next 60 days. Hopefully, it will pass after 60 days. So that's quite a different process that involves more the driver in France or other countries. And the way it is done in Britain is completely fine, and I think it's a great way of doing
we've
it.
got some of the safest roads in
Yeah.
Europe, haven't we?
Yeah, but
So-
for sure. But the thing is that you can't just say, okay, now it's going to be 3-2, because that's not possible.
No.
With that, the way it
It's
works,
so hard
it's
to
a
change.
cultural problem.
Very difficult to change the
no,
culture.
you can't change that. That
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Well, luckily for now, the government
doesn't, yeah.
the government
Yeah.
had a bit of sense to them.
And the 111 or the one every year is so much. I was about to say so much sounder, but at least I think it's clear. It's sounder. It's safer to do this anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. And the whole, sorry,
That's okay, go
I was just about to say the other thing was one of the primary reason for like reviewing that is cost. Cost is nothing. It's like £50,
Yeah.
55 something pound.
But that was the
54.
reason why they was trying to change it. Is
Yeah.
because the cost is
The cost is
isn't the
nothing.
problem.
Yeah.
We try. It's a bit difficult, but we try to say, okay, if you don't go every year but every 2 years, you will have shit will happen, and therefore you're gonna have increasing cost, because if you're driving with a timing belt that is actually not in a good shape for 24 months instead of 12 months, you're gonna have more problems. And if you
100%.
get more problems, it's not gonna just save you £50 every year. Okay, it's gonna cost you 250, 300.
Well, the whole idea behind preventative maintenance is that it's cheaper than a repair.
Bah,
Yeah.
that's what it's called.
You take timing belt as an extreme example, yeah.
So what I was touching on then was obviously with the point, one of the major points that was made by yourself and lots of other people within the industry is like with EVs coming in and the principle 422 is not going to work within the UK. Do you feel like it's more detrimental for Europe to keep a 422 And the likeliness of them moving to a 3-1-1 is probably more beneficial to Europe than it is for us to go the other way.
But imagine what that would do to government.
Yeah. It completely.
You want to lose a general election?
Yeah.
Change the Yeah, I think that's what the.
Can you imagine the French if you tell them every year the strikes and everything? Already, it's an interesting thing. We're going a bit off track now, but MOT for motorcycle is only being discussed now in France. So it has never been a thing.
So there isn't an MOT.
No, and the federation
the
the federation of motorcyclists in France is completely against it.
That's insane.
So just to give you an idea,
it's all cultural, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So speaking about EV, then, Nath, because I think that this is it's obviously a very hot topic. So EV has grown very quickly over the last few years, but according to your presentation yesterday, the growth rate is reducing, so it's still a net increase. It's still growing, but the rate of growth is
the proportion of EV within new car sales is kind of plateauing. New car sales are still increasing.
Yeah.
Okay. So
the net number is up.
Yes.
But the percentage is stagnant.
It's kind of stagnating.
Yeah.
And I think we are about to reach a point where early adopters, the one who wanted an EV car, they got one.
Yeah.
And now it's everyone's Joe who to convince, and that's the next level of adoption.
So if EVs as a percentage of new registrations has stagnated and diesels are falling off a cliff, is it the petrol segment or the hybrid segment that's
petrol, mild hybrid, especially
it's that area that's relevant.
And hybrid is also working well, but the full EV, it's
and if you look at all electrification together, so take all versions of hybrid and pure battery electric, what percentage do you know roughly what percentage we're talking in new car
registrations? It's difficult to compare year on year now because the SMMT will release those numbers. Before, they used to include mild hybrid with hybrid. And now, since the beginning of the year, they include mild hybrid with either petrol or diesel, whatever it is.
Oh, really?
So actually, to do a year-on-year track is very complicated because you can't, you don't have all the details to actually...
So it's going to make hybrid look potentially slightly skewed, slightly lower.
Then I understand their point as well. Mild hybrid, do you call that an hybrid car? Okay.
No, not really.
It looks better when you look at the number of alternative fuel. But in the end, it's probably a good thing that they did that. But the thing is that because it was done a different way before, it's very difficult to compare.
So they're now focusing on any plug-in. Anything that's a plug-in is considered...
Plug-in and just hybrid, like the Prius, for example.
Yes, It's
just mild hybrid that they took away from that alternative fueled vehicle.
And is there much information around hydrogen or potential other fuel cells at the moment?
I don't think, no. It's very limited at the moment. Very limited. I think you've got in the world... it's basically a few
it's got its challenges,
a dozen thousand. Really.
And it's interesting because if you read in the forums, especially from people within the trade, they champion hydrogen much more than pure electric.
Yeah.
There's definitely a bit of a feeling that's potentially the future. I mean, I'm not even remotely
spent no time at it, really.
Qualified to speak about it.
But my only understanding really is that in terms of infrastructure, the investment is easier to make. This is a closer usage to ICE vehicles.
Yeah.
But don't ask me more than that.
It's more you can refill your hydrogen in minutes, whereas EV you're stuck for.
And you need more or less the same kind of web mapping for stations that you need for ICE because the range is about the same as an ICE vehicle.
Can be better.
To me. What I understand is that it makes sense for heavy goods vehicle.
Yeah.
Because a battery electric vehicle for truck is going to be very heavy.
Yes.
And we were talking earlier about the production of electric batteries. The CO2 footprint that goes into that for a truck is massive. Does that make sense? I don't know. But again, that's so many I don't know. So it's difficult to say.
Yeah. Okay. It's definitely an interesting one to. I think because there is that early adopters. There is the big tax incentives. There's been a lot of a surge towards EV, and it is still growing. I still hold my exact same position that I held in the previous episode where we spoke about EV. But I do think that this is like the acid test because now it's the reality. Now they're dropping into the used market.
Yeah.
Is there an appetite to buy used electric vehicles?
And it's like, where could I go if it goes wrong?
And if it goes critically wrong,
who do you go to?
Your options are limited. So it could be considered a little bit of a gamble bit of a roll of the dice.
You can see the used EV market is trying to find its fit. So I think we're getting there. But just in terms of value and residual value, if you look at some reports from Auto Trader, for example, how the price has changed within the last 12 months, you can really see that the market is trying to find itself. If you can say that.
Well, it dropped like a stone, didn't it? But it's
really upset me.
Yeah. Well, we're both in pain.
Yeah. So it was one of those things that, like, especially Tesla as a manufacturer, they made making cars so much cheaper. So it had a huge.
They're causing their own problem, aren't they?
Well, I mean, they were.
That's your problem. I don't know if that's
yes. So they actually were making it more appealing for people to buy new. Yeah. But also the people that had bought early, the early adopters.
Well, they're not bothered. They're not bothered about mission is just to get as many out there as they can.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
sustainable energy for the future. And if you went early, that's your fault.
Yeah. Right. Well, anyway, another interesting debate on EV. It's we'll see where it goes. So finally, I want to speak. The final topic I want to cover with you today is around fleet work. So again, for independent garage owners, there are some that do fleet. There are some that do a bit of fleet. There are some that almost exclusively do fleet, doing it really well, some doing it really bad, some charging £45 an hour, some charging £70. There's a proper mixed bag, and it's got a real mixed reputation within the trade. But I think it's worth noticing that from a data perspective, and this is something that you mentioned yesterday, is that the shift of ownership model is definitely leaning towards leasing vehicles. And if you lease a vehicle, typically speaking, there's some sort of repairs and maintenance included within that lease, which means that somebody else is controlling the direction of that work. And this is where you're speaking about if previously you would be working with a single car owner, and now you might be working with a fleet manager. So going into the future, if you're not currently doing any fleet, and we don't do any fleet at the minute, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on that, the way that the new registrations are really rapidly shifting towards lease vehicles, is it something that independent garages perhaps need to start considering going forwards?
It's a great transition with EV, because if you look at new registration of EVs, it's 70% of new car sales, probably maybe even more than that, is actually fleet or company registered.
Yeah.
Which means that who is going to control the repair, or who's going to be the lead for the repair? Generally, not always, but generally the fleet manager.
Yeah.
And the fleet manager, his only objective, or her only objective, is to squeeze that asset in the best possible way for the minimum cost. And so they are looking for competitive pricing. And competitive pricing can be found in a lot of different places. And the real question for an independent garage, do we want to go down that route? Having in mind that if we go down that route, you're not talking to one car equal one driver, and that's a very B2C approach, and it's a very very personal and easier approach. I don't know if it's easy, but what they've always known.
Yeah.
And then you're going to talk to a fleet manager who's basically a purchaser, and who's gonna negotiate with you. Okay, look, I have 1,000 vehicles. I'm in the local area. You have a few branches. We only stay around that area. We have 1,000 vehicles. What can you do for us?
And I think it's important that you don't undersell yourself. Like we speak about this a lot. Is that you need to you have to be charging a particular labour rate based on your costs. And previously and naturally, like you said, to a fleet manager, it's about reducing costs in most circumstances. But there is an element of customer service that, if you imagine most people start leasing a car, part of their decision making will be, what's the after sales like? If I have a problem with this car and the fleet owner or the fleet manager is paying a garage £40 an hour, what sort of service is that car owner going to get? Could inconvenience them?
That's the thing of the asset manager thinking, is that what I want is to squeeze the asset, so have the most return on that asset. And so the average day where the car is not on the road is costing me money.
Yeah.
So for them, if you are efficient,
downtime is really important.
Quality still has to be appeared.
And so the quality has to be top notch. That means potentially that it has a cost. It doesn't have to be £40 an hour in terms of labor. It could be 80, 100, whatever works for you as an independent garage. But that you have to deliver afterwards.
You have to deliver it. Yeah.
So you need to stay true to yourself, to make your math and making sure that you actually the money is in for you. But then you have to deliver.
And this is the same thing that we hear all the time. It's creating a win-win. and if you don't create
For
a win-win, it's like then this is where the breakdown comes down. Is like if you like they'll try and squeeze you down on the labour rate because they don't really have the relationship with you, don't understand what you do as a business, and really understand what you're going to truly offer as a whole experience. So then it just becomes about price.
Yeah.
So that it's
and nobody wins.
And I think about this quite a lot. Is that I think people trade on 3 steps really, and it's something that I haven't really spoke to many people about. But I think people always trade on money first, and then once money's not the thing, they'll start looking at time. And then after time, it becomes the vision or the quality. It becomes the experience. So everything, like people go through this step within their career or go within their relationships or whatever. It's like, well, I'll just go where it gives me the most money or gives me the cheapest price. And then it's like, oh, well, time is actually more of the asset.
Yeah.
And then actually when it's no more time, it's actually about the quality, the vision of whatever the product is. Then that becomes the most important thing, and then the rest will just fall in line behind it because I believe in that.
It's it's a really good point. I think you're bang on it. It's garage owners knowing that. It's not about when we're talking about perhaps consider fleet. It's not about ringing up any fleet company and offering the cheapest price. It's about this is what we can do, but this is what we charge. And it's perhaps if you're 100% retail today, and this might not be a problem in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but I think that as car ownership changes, then just start considering it and start building those relationships, but do it on value, not on price. Like you said, do it on quality and delivery.
And your trigger as a garage owner to have that discussion as well, for sure, is not all about price. If you look at the heavy goods vehicle, we do a lot of research as well around that area. The premise of a lot or the USP of a lot of independent garage versus the truck dealer is that, look, we are using genuine part anyway.
Yeah,
we buying those guys, we're buying their parts. It's just our labor rate is cheaper. Okay, so in the end, that's the story. You know, I have my head cost my overheads are not the same as the dealer. I can afford to offer you 80, 100 pound per hour, and on top of this, I'm gonna use genuine parts, vehicle manufacturer branded parts. And if that's not available for some reason, don't worry, we can use premium
aftermarket,
aftermarket parts from our trusted.
And then you can just compete on service.
Well, you can compete on turnaround, but as an ecosystem, independents are way slicker. And there's not.
Well, you're more agile.
You move quick,
aren't you?
Absolutely, and that's what the customer wants.
So as a garage, really, you have all those other things than price that is important in your value proposition to
100%. Yeah. Okay, so. And I think that again, just to emphasize on the fleet and lease opportunity, is that used car leasing is now a thing, and as that lease market grows and more people buy, into leases instead of ownership of cars, when those cars come off that term, they may be offered back to the customer at a cheaper rate for the next 3 years.
Yeah, so it's not. So when they go new, used.
Exactly. It doesn't go new dealership used independent car sales into the aftermarket. It could go.
It can be a used car still within,
and then lease again, and then if you're not ready to take that work. And no one can get away from that. Most people these days subscribe to pretty much everything that they do. And a car's no different. A car with a repair plan.
It's a commodity.
It's just no risk, isn't it? It really is no risk, especially when there has been quite a bit of,
people want to know how to manage their budgets, don't they? Yeah. So it's like if my budget is for my car is this, if it breaks, then it's somebody else's problem. Yeah. So that person's budget, it's not going to rock their world like that, is it? So.
And for new car buyers, that's really the spirit. They buy a car new, hassle-free. So they want the service plan and everything else that is included. And as much as possible included in the service plan. Tires, whatever. So if we are looking at that kind of second cycle leasing used vehicle, there will be some of that in there as well. And with a profile of drivers that really don't want to bother about after sales.
Of course, yeah. And they haven't got the money for new, but they want the same hassle-free experience.
And I think, generally speaking, everyone would like that kind of thing. Yeah. It all depends on price and where you feel comfortable about it.
But when it makes perfect sense, when you sit here and think about used car leasing, it does make perfect sense, which means there's probably some merit to it. And if you Google it today, you can lease a used car today. So if that does become a thing, then independence, you need to be. I think you need to be considering it at least.
And I think on the flip of that, I think people's how they feel about servicing new vehicles within the independent. I feel like we take what we get from the 5 to 9. We take what we get because it's great and it's so good. So we sort of try and avoid the new car registrations, but I think we'd be worth touching on like the block exemption, and that people can actually go for the 0 to 3. There's a great opportunity there where it does stand within fleets as well. So you go and approach a fleet, if they've got new vehicles, you can be confident in saying that we can service the brand new vehicles. There's some caveats to it, and we do need to do a bit of work on the products that we provide. The registering the services on the platform,
Dealer
the manufacturer,
portals, manufacturer portals.
There's a lot to sort of consider on the flip. I feel like we start to talk about it and we can get quite defensive. Actually, we can get a bit more offensive with it. Really, it's like get offensive, get on the newer cars. But
it's been that it doesn't just apply to lease cars, does it? The block exemption applies to privately owned vehicles. They don't need to stay within the dealer network. The independents can service those cars, maintain the warranties on those cars, service them to the same standard that the dealership does. They can fill in the digital service records just like the dealership does. So I think it's really important that for private car owners that consider the independent garages as a very viable option.
And the awareness, we researched that in the past, the awareness of British drivers around that is very, very low.
Really? So
very low, yes.
And is it because they don't know that?
They don't know. They've never been told. It's not when you're going to buy a new car, you're not going to be told, thank you so much. You don't have to come back for your next service. Please go to the independent. There is something called block exemption. That's great. Go and see someone else.
Yeah.
So it has to be someone else. And interestingly, in France, when I was much younger, I wasn't driving yet, but there were some kind of advertisement, kind of bit of fight, TV ads between a big fast food chain and a big OEM. They were saying, we can service your car. You don't have to go and see them. And then they say, yeah, but we actually build the car, so we are the best to serve. And there were some kind of back and forth stories around that, and that really raised the awareness of drivers. If you don't have that kind of message, how would they know?
So it's an opportunity.
Yeah, massive.
And a message that does need to get. I didn't realize. Do you know how low it is? Have you got the actual stats on?
Not a recent one, so I wouldn't. I have a figure in mind, but I would prefer to check.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's low.
Yeah, it's low. Yeah.
Talking about the NPS, it'd be good to get like the NPS of customers that do use the independent network and compare that NPS
to the franchise.
Yeah, to the franchise and see what that looks like. Because obviously, if you was to do a segment.
Well, if you look at garage industry trends, we can see that the average NPS of the independent garages opt-in is exceptional.
Yeah,
it's like world class. I think it's mid-80s towards 90s, something like that. Mm-hmm. So in general, a trip to an independent garage is a very satisfying trip for the average car owner. Yeah. And it's something that they should, if they are currently using the dealership and they're not that happy with what's happening at the dealership, but they're only going there because they think they have to because the dealership's told them, give your independent a try. Give them a ring. Ask them if they can do it to a dealership standard. Ask them if they can sign your digital service record. And if so, just give them a try. Yeah.
And generally in the research we do, so we track that NPS slightly differently than you do because we don't ask the drivers like 24 hours after or 48 hours after, but we interview them a year for that last year. What did you do? So the way they remember it's not necessarily the same. So we can't probably compare your numbers with ours because they are going to the methodology is not exactly the same. But independent garage and dealers have the highest NPS compared to other type of repairers in the UK. So there is definitely there are if you dig into that, then you can find those ones were not happy because of this, because of that. Yes. But the two highest ranked in terms of NPS channels are the independent garage and the dealer.
Yeah. So dealers on the whole are doing a decent job as well.
Definitely. Yeah. Then it's just what's does the proposition fits what I need for my car? That's really the question.
Yeah. Cool.
And for some, in the 0-4 years bracket, I don't know if I say that already, but just in case, what they want is the stamp to preserve the value of the car. Yeah. So they want to go back to the dealer because they know that in the long run, when they sell their car used, in terms of value, that's going to be positive for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a challenge for the independents to overcome, isn't it? I think it's funny because the digital service records present a big problem for independents, but there are solutions to it.
It's a huge opportunity with the problems it presents.
But it kind of eliminates that dealer-only stamp, doesn't it? Because they introduce those digital service records as a way of making it almost impossible for the independents to stamp that service book. But actually, if you're not currently doing it, you can get access to all of those.
They're all free to get.
They're all free to get. Yeah, they are. Yeah, and you can add an actual service record to the official record of that vehicle, which is what customers come to expect. But they just don't think that you can do it.
But it's pretty cool. So when you're printing a copy of, because we print a few off just to show them that that's actually
the actual record.
It's got the headed manufacturer on there and it's got our name on it. It's adding to the feel and thinking, actually, why would I need a dealer?
Yeah.
So I'm just being provided the same thing. The cost is a lot lower.
Lower.
I know the people that are behind the desk because I feel like I know them on a name basis. They're there the next year and then they're the next year after. I have a relationship, whereas you go to a dealer, it becomes quite a transactional sort of experience, whereas you come into me and yourself.
Okay, I am conscious how long we've been speaking for. Just under an hour, which is not bad, really. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, really enjoyed that chat. I think it's worth mentioning that the UK Garage and Body Shop event it's 5th and 6th of June. 5th
and 6th.
Is it? I'll put if you're from the independent sector, this is one of those events that it's so condensed with information and people and stands that if you can afford half a day or a day out of the business, it's in Birmingham at the NEC.
The NEC in Birmingham. It's almost like the Super Bowl event for the automotive industry. It's where everyone gets together and has a stand and shows their products, and you get to meet so many people that you just wouldn't meet in your regular day because they might not be able to get to you, and you definitely won't reach out to them. It's just an opportunity to just not have the operating day running alongside you. You can just go, right, let's work on the business.
Get in the right headspace. And there's talks all day long as well, and including us three are actually going to be there. So
you can stop thinking about the daily business and just listen to a bit like this podcast. You listen at what people have to share with you and think, okay, what do I take home and what do I need to think for the business?
Well, if people want to listen more, you're doing a presentation around EV.
Yeah, on the Thursday, so that's the 6th, I believe.
Yeah.
6th,
yeah, and that's at 11. Yeah.
And what are you talking about?
EV.
EV. Cool.
EV.
How workshop can make the most out of EV.
Nice.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Yeah, so if they want to catch you there, that'll be on the second day.
Yeah.
Nath, you're on LKQ stand speaking.
So I'm speaking on the 5th on the LKQ stand, talking about social media, but more towards marketing.
And we're doing an episode on marketing, which is going to be released later on. So I don't know if we spoke about your marketing too much.
No, we'll do that in the next episode.
But Nath's got a huge following on social media, very successful presence on social media with Warsaw Wood, which is what you're going to be discussing on LKQ.
Well, and on the next episode as well.
On the next episode, So I will also be on LKQ's stand.
You're everywhere, mate.
Sharing some data on... just showing some metrics and KPIs from within Lindley. So if you're interested, you want to come and see some of that data, then come in. I'll put the timings in the show in the description of the video. I'm also doing a presentation on, I don't know which day it is. That's good, isn't it? I think it's the second day I'm doing the presentation on.
So Thursday, yeah.
The Thursday, which is around, again, it's going to be around how to use data from your GMS. And then finally, I'll also be on the Castrol stand sharing some data around servicing.
And do you have a stand?
And we have Garage Hive have a stand as well, but I ain't going to be there. I don't think. No, I will be there as and when I can. But the Garage Hive has got a very good presence. So there's going to be a full team there, where we're going to be demonstrating some pretty cool AI technology as well. Which is hopefully going to be a big game changer. But on the Castrol stand, I'm going to be sharing some information around volume of servicing and how we've increased our service work, and essentially how Lindley's took the decision to lean more into MOT and service. And we spoke about MOT being at least 50% of MOTs are booked with something else. And we're seeing quite a few strategies now where people will only book an MOT if they book it in with a service, because they actually don't want a customer who's just having an MOT. They actually want the customers who want the preventative maintenance. So I'll speak about some of the tactics we've used in how to essentially increase service work. So tickets are still available. You follow the link below and you can register to come to the event, and hopefully we'll see you there. So, come and
that'd be really good. That'd be really good.
So that brings us to the end. Quentin, thank you so much. I know you're an extremely busy man. I know you've got to literally run out of this building and go jump on a train down to London.
He's an exceptionally good-looking human.
He's too good-looking. It's actually annoying me.
Really annoyed that I'm not the best-looking.
No, not even close today,
remotely
mate.
Close.
When Leo's back, it's sound.
Yeah, perfect.
We're all good.
Normal service resumed.
I'm the only one without blue eyes, though.
So dark brown eyes. I think that's no, really appreciate it, mate.
Thank you very much, man.
I feel very honoured that you've agreed to come.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, great.
Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you like the episode, please subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Socials.
Socials, TikTok, Facebook, whatever it is, we're pretty much everywhere. So really hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.